Every afternoon, Jennifer Soto would wait by the gate of Hunter Screw School to pick up her daughter, watching as her classmates trickled out one by one. But one day, everything felt different. Jennifer wondered why Madeline was taking so long. At 13 years old, she could sometimes be forgetful, but this was becoming unusual. When the last student left the building and Madeline was still nowhere to be seen, Jennifer's worry turned to fear. She hurried to one of the teachers and asked if something had happened, only to be met with a chilling response. Madeline hadn't been to school since Monday, February 26, 2024. Trying to stay calm, Jennifer replayed the morning's events in her mind. Madeline had woken up on time, packed her backpack, and dressed for school, just like any other day. Her stepfather, Stefan Stearns, was supposed to drive her as usual, or at least that's what Jennifer had believed. But what had really happened to Madeline? Could there be a hidden family secret that explained her disappearance? The details of Madeline Soto's short life remain mostly private out of respect for her as a minor and because of the crimes committed against her. Even the specifics of the investigation following her disappearance were kept largely under wraps. One chilling fact that did surface was that just hours before her tragic end, Madeline had celebrated her birthday. Her stepfather, Stefan Stearns, had organized the event, as her mother Jennifer was working late. That detail became even more ominous in light of what later unfolded. Madeline had been happily celebrating her 13th birthday, but the very next day, everything would change. The mystery of her disappearance began to unravel, aided by security camera footage from her neighborhood and the building where she lived with her mother and stepfather. When she was reported missing, the town of Kissimmee, Florida, was gripped with fear. No one knew where she could have gone or where to even start looking. Her parents gave interviews on television, expressing confusion just like their neighbors. They claimed the morning had been just like any other, and insisted that Madeline had never shown any signs of wanting to run away. In those early hours, authorities still considered the possibility that she might have left on her own, although Jennifer was adamant that there had been no family conflict. However, what Jennifer viewed as normal family dynamics might not have been as harmonious as she believed. Investigators, familiar with such cases, kept a close eye on those closest to the girl. Something might have been going on inside the home that wasn't immediately visible. Jennifer told the police, and later the media, that she had seen her daughter getting ready for school that morning. She hadn't noticed anything out of the ordinary. Madeline had even left her cell phone behind, something her mother didn't find odd due to the girl's attention deficit disorder, which often made her forgetful. What stood out, though, was that Stefan Stearns had also left his phone at home, leaving no way to track either of them. Madeline had supposedly gotten into her stepfather's car as usual for the drive to school. Their routine was that Stefan would drop her off a short distance from the school so she could walk the remaining way. In interviews, Stearns appeared deeply regretful, saying he felt guilty for not making sure she had made it safely inside. Jennifer, however, was convinced her daughter had been kidnapped. There had been no ransom demands or clear signs of abduction, but authorities focused on the family's cell phones and Madeline's social media for clues. From the start, something seemed off about Stern's statements. He mentioned taking anti-anxiety medication to cope with Madeline's disappearance, but his story didn't add up. He claimed that he had driven her to school via Union Parkway, then detoured to a McDonald's before getting lost. Later, he said he had gone back home to retrieve a remote control for a gate, and after that, mentioned buying tobacco. At one point, he even said he had a flat tire. Investigators suspected that something darker was being hidden in these confusing accounts. The breakthrough came when authorities searched the family's phones and reviewed security footage. Their goal was to pinpoint when and where Madeline deviated from her usual route to school. The first disturbing clue came from footage outside their apartment building. At 7:35 a.m. on the day she disappeared, Stearns was seen walking toward a dumpster carrying Madeline's backpack and laptop. Without hesitation, he tossed them into the trash before heading back inside. This indicated that he never intended to take her to school that day. The second discovery was even more horrifying. Stern's phone contained hundreds of recently deleted files. He claimed they were lost due to a technical glitch, but forensic software revealed the contents, countless images and videos of abuse, with Madeline as the victim in most of them. Faced with this evidence, police immediately arrested Stearns, suspecting not only that he had been abusing Madeline for at least 2 years, but also that he had a hand in her disappearance. The security footage, combined with the digital evidence, pointed to a devastating conclusion. Not only had Madeline not run away, but she had likely been murdered by the very person she trusted to protect her. The city was plastered with posters of Madeline Soto's face and description. Police officers combed both the urban areas and the nearby forests, hoping to find the 13-year-old girl. The missing persons posters described her as a blonde teenager with fair skin and blue eyes. At the time of her disappearance, she had been wearing a green t-shirt, black shorts, and white Crocs. Despite these efforts, no neighbors reported seeing her, but the description did confirm investigators' growing fears. Footage from a security camera captured Stefan Stern's car returning to their building around 8 a.m. Stearns claimed he had returned to get a remote control, but the footage showed something more troubling. In the passenger seat was a young girl slumped over, matching Madeline's description. For the investigators, this wasn't a hopeful sign. They didn't believe Stearns had brought her home. Instead, they suspected that by then, Madeline was already dead. Multiple security clips taken between 7:36 and 8:19 a.m. showed the girl in the same exact position. Another clip showed Stearns at 9:42 a.m., loading something large into the trunk of his car, which investigators believed to be a body. Convinced that Stearns had killed Madeline, though they hadn't yet found her body, police broke the devastating news to Jennifer, her mother. Jennifer was shocked, struggling to process this turn in the investigation. However, there were still unanswered questions for the police. Jennifer seemed unaware of the abuse Madeline had suffered at the hands of her stepfather. She then began to share unsettling details about their family life. She revealed that Madeline often slept in the same bed as her and Stearns, a behavior she didn't find unusual. At times, Madeline and her stepfather even slept alone in the marital bed, which Jennifer excused by saying her daughter needed physical contact to sleep. Despite these red flags, no one in Madeline's circle admitted that something was terribly wrong. The evidence recovered from Stearns' phone spoke for itself. Detectives had managed to retrieve 1,700 explicit photos and videos, confirming their worst fears. Stearns was not only a predator, but also likely Madeline's killer. For 4 days, police units searched tirelessly for her, and eventually their grim suspicions were confirmed. Madeline's body was found discarded in a wooded area not far from her mother's home, and the man suspected of murdering her. Authorities kept many details about Madeline's death and the location of her body private, out of respect for her. However, on March 1, 2024, the police confirmed that they had found her body in a heavily wooded area in Osceola County. The discovery followed a tip from a witness who claimed to have seen Stearns that morning, pulled over by the roadside to change a tire, just as Stearns had mentioned. At that point, it seemed likely that Stearns had already disposed of Madeline's body in the woods. As part of the investigation, local police circulated photos of Stearns and his car, hoping someone would come forward with information about his movements on the day of the crime. On March 1st, search teams scoured an area near the I-4 highway where they eventually found human remains. The discovery was particularly haunting, as days earlier, investigators had found a note on Madeline's social media. In it, she wrote about a dream of living in the woods when she turned 13, a dream that tragically came true in the worst possible way. Stearns had been taken into custody days earlier after investigators uncovered the incriminating material on his phone. Once Madeline's body was found, a formal arrest warrant was issued for him on March 4th. He faced charges not only for murder but also for years of abuse, with the evidence showing that Madeline had been his victim since the age of 11. Despite the sensitive nature of the case, there was a shocking incident involving the sheriff of Osceola County. Less than 24 hours after Madeline's body was found, the sheriff accidentally posted a photo of the crime scene on Instagram. In the image, the clothing matched what Madeline had been wearing when she disappeared. The post was quickly removed, and he apologized, insisting it was an accident. Nonetheless, the public and media were outraged, calling for his resignation. In the aftermath, it became clear that Madeline had endured years of unimaginable suffering in her home, and the community was shaken. School officials offered support to both students and staff. The Friday that Madeline's body was found, a prayer vigil was held at her school, but nothing seemed enough to heal the scars of her ordeal. 2 months after the crime, Stefan Stearns was charged with first-degree murder and awaited trial. He faced a possible sentence of 25 years to life in prison, with prosecutors signaling that they might seek the death penalty. The media continued to cover the case, despite the secrecy surrounding it, and Madeline's biological father finally spoke to the press. He expressed deep regret for not being able to protect his daughter. Although he had lived far from her, he maintained close contact, having last spoken to her just hours before her death on her 13th birthday. He never imagined that the next day, his daughter would be missing. Although Jennifer Soto, Madeline's mother, had not been implicated in the crime, there were still lingering questions about her role. Investigators questioned whether she had been aware of the abuse or even helped cover it up. She had initially lied, saying she had seen Madeline that morning, when in reality, the last time she had seen her daughter was at 11 p.m. the night before. There was even uncertainty about when exactly Madeline had been killed. Perhaps it had happened during the night of her birthday. As the trial against Stearns approached, local authorities implemented new measures to prevent future tragedies like Madeline's. Schools in the county now notify parents immediately if their child doesn't show up for class, in the hopes of catching warning signs earlier. However, for Madeline, it was too late. The horrors she had endured went unnoticed for too long, and no amount of reform could bring her back. The lingering question remains: how did so many warning signs go unnoticed? Why did it take so long for someone to realize that Madeline was suffering behind closed doors? Now, all that remains is the hope for justice, but it will never be enough to restore the life of a girl who should have had so much more ahead of her. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.